It's time for overtime.
Ready for this?
In the world of sports, it's all about the playmakers in today's headlines, from locals to the pros, with interviews from local standouts and sports all-stars across the country that will have you talking.
Now to Giannis. Giannis with 50 and 2 of his last 3 now. Pulls up. 15-footer. Yes, sir!
Hear from coaches to players, sports analysts, and broadcasters who are a part of the action every day. Overtime, now with Bert Ramin on ESPN 102.3 AM 1000 KSOO, Sioux Falls sports leader.
Welcome in to another Friday edition of Overtime. It's a beautiful day in the 605. It is a horrific day for yours truly. The Packers, a softer team than the Detroit Lions. And yes, man, oh man, last night, pretty darn humbling for Green Bay. They fight in the second half. Respectable performance, I guess. But here we are once again. The Packers have not beaten a really good team this year. Their best win, is it the Niners? Is it the Texans? Is it the Dolphins? Packers looking to compete with these good teams cannot get the job done once again. They get really dinged up. 3 different players leave the ball game for Green Bay just on the defensive side of the football. And Detroit reigns supreme. Dan Campbell, the best bad coach in the NFL. No, he's not a bad football coach, but what the heck is he thinking? It's so genius. It is dumb at the same time. He finds a way to get it done. He's right 4 out of 5 times last night on 4th downs, including a 4th down that he went for at his own 25, 30-yard line that gave the Green Bay Packers the football there. And late in the game, opportunity to win the game with a chip shot field goal. Opts to go for it to bleed off 30-ish seconds off the clock and kick a field goal to win it anyway. Dan Campbell succeeds, rolls the dice. It comes up aces for him. And the Detroit Lions, they stay the best team in the NFL, 34-31, and my Packers are left scrambling for answers once again on how, what, where, why, and when. The answer that's obvious, Detroit is the where, and they got hit in the mouth once again. Here's how it all ended as we get to your show log here in just a moment. But first things first, Lions go for it on 4th down with the game tied at 31, less than a minute to go.
Out of the huddle and to the line. Lions 3 out of 4 tonight on 4th down. Packers stacking that line. On 4th down, Jared up under center, turns, gives it to Montgomery, gets the first down. Jared tripped as he came out from behind center, handed it to Demo, just barely got it to him. He got the first down to the 14-yard line. You let that clock run now, down to 30, and the Packers can't stop it.
Crazy, aggressive football for the Detroit Lions. It paid off last night, 34-31, the win. On today's show, Darren Wolfson of KSTP in the Twin Cities. We're talking Kirk Cousins' revenge game. And why a lot of fans are not going to boo Kirk Cousins this weekend. Is that the right mentality heading into the matchup? We'll also dive into Timberwolves talk and some other topics today. Darren Wolfson of KSTP in the Twin Cities joining us in about 20 minutes on the show. Thursday Night Football recap, the latest from the NFL, a couple injury updates for that Green Bay Packer defense, college football weekend preview. It's a big one. And your picks, all the FCS spreads are out. You can find those right now at ESPNSiouxFalls.com. Hour number 2, latest from the NFL, the latest playoff standings. Who can catch the Lions? What is feasible? Are the Packers completely done in the NFC North as far as competing for a division crown? We'll get you that answer and stack up the league as we enter week 14 officially as of last night. The good, the bad, the ugly, and best bets for your weekend. Our pal Lee Sterling of Paramount Sports set to join us around 12:45. More from that ball game. Jared Goff, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Early portion of the second half. Here's what he had to say about his team clinching a playoff berth last night with the win.
What does it mean to clinch a playoff spot?
Yeah, I just heard that. Yeah, pretty cool. Certainly, yeah, not what our ultimate goal is. You know, we want to win this division and got some work to do still. But, yeah, cool to know that we're in the dance and want to see where we're seated now.
Very impressive division. Some people came away impressed with the Green Bay Packers' second half performance last night. They are 9-4. The Lions are 12-1. Here's quarterback Jordan Love of the Packers.
It's tough. You know, it's a little bit of adversity, but we've handled adversity. We've been here, had a tough loss early on, a couple. So it's not anything that we haven't seen before. You know, we'll stick together and we'll handle it like any other week. We'll get back to the film room, figure out what we got to clean up, and find ways to get better to finish the season off. But obviously, like you said, anytime you're winning and take a tough loss like this, it's going to disrupt momentum. But we just got to get back to the drawing board and get back to work.
From the Packers quarterback to the Packers head coach, here's Matt LaFleur.
All these games from here on out, like I told our team, they're going to come down to situations like this. And I do think we have a really good football team. I think we're going to get everybody's best shot, just like we're going to give everybody our best shot. And it's just a few plays here and there that really separate these types of games.
That's Matt LaFleur of the Green Bay Packers. Cam Newton, former NFL MVP, critical of Green Bay, saying they're not it. And we found that out last night.
Super Bowl contenders, not so fast. I mean, let's speak in reason now. There were some things that I seen last night in last night's game where it's like, okay, Jordan Love is legit. The Green Bay Packers are legit. And then there are also some times where I was watching the game and I'm like, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? So if I'm just being honest, playoff contenders, yes. Super Bowl contenders, not so.
There is some commonality between the Lions and the Packers, but the thing that immediately stands out to me every single time these two teams get together since Dan Campbell has been the head coach, and that includes when the Lions were bad in year number 1 under Campbell, finished the season strong with a win in Green Bay to knock them out of playoff contention. Since they've matched up under Dan Campbell, the physicality and the pride in which they play is the difference. You can have all the finesse, all the playmakers, the more talented team, not necessarily the case for Green Bay. And it doesn't matter if you get punched in the mouth and you don't respond. Green Bay came out and immediately, most common sense fans would say, gee, the Detroit Lions are without 4 starters on the defensive side, maybe even 5 or 6 starters. They're going to be without a couple of interior defensive linemen. We got this guy named Josh Jacobs, a couple other promising backs behind him. Why don't we just run the ball all night long, 365? Let's do it and make them stop us. Packers come out, throw a pass immediately. Throw another one, take a sack. Jordan Love gets hit in the face. No call. Regardless, I don't care about the calls. I thought it was relatively even. I think that the refs made it a little bit easier for Detroit to win. But that being said, Lions' better football team last night deserved to win the game. But moving forward, Detroit and Green Bay got completely off their game from the jump last night, never really rekindled it until late in the second quarter. Third quarter, they came out and had a couple great possessions, scored quickly, interception, scored again. Detroit comes down and scores to answer. Back and forth we go, and Green Bay made it interesting. But I don't want to make it interesting. You want to win the football game, be the more aggressive team, punch your division rival in the face. Green Bay's got one divisional win this year, and it's against the Chicago Bears, and it's because they blocked a field goal at the very end of the game in which they were set to lose. It has been very disappointing for Green Bay within the division and against top-tier teams this year. Michelle Smallman saying the Detroit Lions are a complete team, and they showcased that last night.
I know you haven't been there, Cece. I am very much Super Bowl or bust with this Lions team. That's how complete they are. With all the injuries that they had on defense last night, they still find a way to get the win. The aggressiveness from Dan Campbell, it just feels like they have that je ne sais quoi around them, that vibe of winning. They've got the momentum, they've got the talent, they've got the coaching. They really are the complete package, even with so many injuries that they've sustained.
I'm going to say this. I thought it last night during the game, and a lot of people are going to say, Bert, you're just being a sore loser. You're picking on the Lions because they just beat the Packers. I don't think that I am here. From a common sense perspective, what is your opinion out there of Dan Campbell? Heck of a coach. Incredible leader of men. Clearly the guys love playing for him. But I'll tell you this honestly, last year I was very critical of Dan Campbell after they blew a 20-point lead in the second half against the Niners to cost themselves a chance at the Super Bowl. Who was most responsible for that? The offensive coordinator, the decision maker on the big fourth downs to pass up field goals and try to get it into the end zone for a touchdown. You're up 20 points in the playoffs on the road last season, and you're doing that. That's my one chink in the armor of Detroit is the decision-making of Dan Campbell. Last night, couple big decisions. I'm fine. If you want to turn 3 into 7, you have an opportunity to score, you're in Packer territory early in the game, and you got the lead, you want to seize the momentum, or you want to have the lead and seize the momentum, be aggressive. That's fine. There's a fine line, though, between being aggressive and being flat out stupid. And last night, there were a couple really stupid moments for Dan Campbell, particularly in the second half. Green Bay, touchdown. Lions throw a pick. Packers score a touchdown. The Packers are up 4. Lions engineer a 13-play, 70-yard drive. They go down and score to take a 3-point lead against the Packers. Green Bay comes back, 3 plays, 7 yards. They punt it away. Then the Lions, from their own 22-yard line, start a drive. Gain of 3, gain of 1, gain of 5. It's 4th and 1 at the Detroit 31. There is a minute to go in the third quarter. You're at home. You're leading the game. The Packers just punted the football to you, and what do in that scenario? You go for it from your own 31-yard line. There's a fine line again between aggressive and dumb, and that was a very dumb moment. Yes, hindsight is 20/20. They were right 4 times out of 5 on 4th down last night. The Packers could not stop them at certain moments, especially in the end zone. 2 4th down touchdowns for Detroit. But I'm asking honestly out there, how is this going to play out in the postseason for Dan Campbell? If you're at home, you have a lead, and you're going for it from your own 31-yard line late third quarter against an inferior opponent, I don't know what's going to happen in the postseason, and Ryan Clark echoes my sentiment because we pick apart Nick Sirianni when he makes these bonehead, aggressive video game moves on the Eagles sideline. Dan Campbell, though, is praised for it. He's better at it, more lucky in this case. And here's Ryan Clark echoing my sentiment today about Dan Campbell, who could eventually maybe cost the Lions a game in the future and a bigger game than last night.
The way we applaud the Detroit Lions for going for it on 4th down and playing 4 downs to get 10. You know the only other team that does it as much? The Philadelphia Eagles. Right? Nick Sirianni has been criticized for being a little over-aggressive because he didn't necessarily set the precedent that Dan Campbell has set. He hadn't necessarily had the success we feel it. And honestly, we just like him less as a person for some reason. And I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about the media's perception and the outside perception of Coach Sirianni. And so I do believe that I believe in Nick Sirianni because one of these dudes have been to a Super Bowl, right? One of these dudes pushed Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes to the brink of the last drive where Superman had to go be Superman. And so I do think, I would take Dan Campbell as my coach over Nick Sirianni, but I do believe Nick Sirianni in those positions and situations can make the right decision.
And I'll be clear here again, I'm not picking apart Dan Campbell saying he's a bad football coach, but in these moments, you got to put your pride aside. And I frankly thought the Lions were in a great position to win the game. Packers were out of timeouts, roughly 40 seconds left to win it. I think it was a 39-yard field goal at that point. They go for it on 4th down. They end up with a 34, 35-yard game-winning field goal. Couple questionable decisions. You can guarantee yourself a win if you make a routine field goal. Your kickers missed 1 kick all year long, and they put the game on the line and give the Packers an opportunity to earn a stop on 4th down. We know how it ended. Hindsight 20/20. Great. Dan Campbell's a genius. But if it went the other way last night, let's just say it didn't go the way of the Detroit Lions. The Packers get the ball. They go down, get a field goal. We are absolutely roasting Dan Campbell today. And while the Lions are the better team, better coach team, they play hard for Dan Campbell. The players love it. No doubt about it. I don't think that is a winning recipe in the postseason, being that reckless and aggressive, despite the fact that it worked out last night, and it has worked out pretty darn well for Dan Campbell so far as head coach of the Detroit Lions. End of spiel. Lions better than the Packers this year for sure. Hopefully Green Bay gets a crack at those guys in the postseason. That game would be again at Ford Field. New records 12-1 for Detroit, 9-4 for the Green Bay Packers. Sunday slate, Falcons at Vikings is a noon kickoff. Minnesota a 5.5-point favorite. Bears at Niners, 3:25 in the afternoon. Niners are a 3.5-point home favorite in that game. Big time clash on Sunday Night Football, Chargers and Chiefs. Justin Herbert is not shying away from this game and the opportunity it presents.
I think it's always a great opportunity to play against them. We've got so much respect for them, and we understand, how much success they've had the past few years and what they've been able to do. But it's another great opportunity to go play football. It's week by week in this league, and if you start looking ahead or you start, making one game more important than the other, I think you lose sense of reality and where you're at in the year. You know, we've got a very healthy respect for them. We know what they're capable of. But at the same time, you know, we got to attack this week with, you know, our full effort, focus dialed in, and make sure that we're on top of things.
Chargers quarterback Justin Herbert on the other side, Kansas City at home. They've got just one loss all year long, 7:20 the start time on NBC. Chris Canty offering some criticism to those that are offering criticism to Kansas City.
To say that Mahomes, doesn't quite look like Mahomes, first of all, it's not true. Second of all, who cares? It's Patrick Mahomes, right? Like, you're talking about a guy that has started his career with the second longest conference championship game appearance streak in NFL history. The only team that has more consecutive conference championship game appearances was the New England Patriots from 2011 through 2018. They went to 8 straight. It's the only team that has a longer streak than what Patrick Mahomes started his career with. They are the ultimate benefit of the doubt team, which is why I can't take anything that I'm seeing from them in the way of criticism too seriously at this point in the season.
Chargers at Chiefs again, 7:20 on NBC. Sunday Night Football. Monday night, Bengals at Cowboys, 7:15 on ESPN and ABC. College Football Championship weekend begins tonight. UNLV and Boise State, 7 o'clock on Fox. Tulane and Army, 7 o'clock on ABC. Saturday, Iowa State, Arizona State meet at 11 o'clock a.m. in the Big 12 title game. Georgia and Texas. SEC game gets going at 3 o'clock. Here's head coach Kirby Smart talking up the Longhorn defense.
Texas does a tremendous job. First of all, they have really good players. They have very sound schemes. They out-execute you. They figure out your tendencies, and they do a great job of recognizing formation, routes. They have instinctive defensive football players, especially on the second level, where they read routes, they jump routes, they do a tremendous job. So that has a lot to do. They get hands on balls. They get a lot of tips. And when you get tips, you tend to get a lot of interceptions. They are one of the best in the country at doing that.
Georgia head coach Kirby Smart, that game 3 o'clock on ABC. Penn State and Oregon, Big Ten title game, 7 o'clock on CBS. And Clemson and SMU, the ACC title game, 7 o'clock on ABC. Wacky news yesterday from the NFL, college football, and the broad strokes of the football world. Bill Belichick interviewing for the University of North Carolina head coach opening. Paul Feinbaum talking about what he thinks of that scenario.
I could. At Chapel Hill is a very unique situation. The expectations aren't the same as Georgia, Texas, and Alabama. They have a great infrastructure. And if they're patient, I think he could turn that place around. Mac Brown almost got over the hump. He just couldn't quite. Bill Belichick could easily do that.
If you were going to offer me up someone that is absolutely positively not a fit for the college game right now, Bill Belichick would make my list absolutely right now, because of the fact that it is a 365 job right now. Recruiting, payment of players, NIL deals, XYZ. Bill Belichick's so used to that pro environment. It would absolutely floor me if Belichick passed up another NFL opportunity to go down to the college football ranks. UNC is a good job. Great landing spot. Prideful University. Opportunity to win the ACC pretty darn easily, because that conference is in flux right now. A lot of movers and shakers. Good teams are bad, X, Y, and Z. But Bill Belichick, to me, a weird fit for the college game. Did not see that one coming. FCS playoffs this weekend. Montana visiting South Dakota State, 1 o'clock on ESPN+, and Tarleton State, the opponent for USD. That game kicks off at 2 o'clock inside the Dakota Dome on ESPN+. Moving through your scorecard, NBA basketball. Nuggets lost in Cleveland last night, 126-114. Nuggets are 11-9. The Cavs are 20-3. OKC wins 129-92 in Toronto. They're 17-5. Chicago over San Antonio, 139-124. The Bulls are 10-13. And 33 points from Jonathan Kuminga propels Golden State to a 99-93 win at home against Houston. Tonight in the NBA, Bucks at Celtics 6:30, Pacers at Bulls, a 7 o'clock go time. Timberwolves at Warriors, good ball game, 9 o'clock tonight on ESPN. Women's basketball yesterday, 3 ranked-on-ranked battles. South Carolina edging Duke 81-70. Notre Dame taking overtime to defeat Texas 80-70. And it was UNC over Kentucky, 72-53 from Chapel Hill. Nothing going on today for our teams in our neck of the woods in women's basketball. But tomorrow, USC USD is home to Northern Arizona at 11 o'clock, and SDSU visits Montana 3 o'clock in the afternoon on ESPN+. Upset last night in men's basketball. 8th-ranked Purdue loses at Penn State 81-70. And coming up Saturday in men's basketball, USD at Northern Arizona, 1 o'clock on ESPN+, and Eastern Washington up in Brookings to battle the Jackrabbits. That gets going Saturday at 6 o'clock in the evening. And don't miss out tonight, Minnesota Wild on ESPN+, 9 o'clock puck drop from Anaheim and a matchup with the Ducks. Those are your Reliabank headlines of the day and a look at your scorecard. Still so much to get to from around the sports world throughout the show. Bert's Bank, High Noon Showdown, Friday Parlay also on the way. We're going to take a break, come back talking all things Twin Cities sports scene. Kirk Cousins coming back in to the Twin Cities with the Atlanta Falcons this weekend. That storyline, the matchup, everything you need to know about the Viking season. The Minnesota Timberwolves out to a sluggish start. What needs to continue to go right for them? Darren Wolfson of KSTP in the Twin Cities joins us next on Overtime.
Get ESPN with the free app and online. Grab your phone or call us up on your smart device. Now let's get you back to Overtime with Bert Ramin on ESPN 102.3 and AM 1000 KSOO.
Right back with you on this Friday edition of Overtime. Reminder, stay tuned. We got a big show ahead, including a full recap of last night's NFC North battle and bout between the Lions and the Packers. Bert's Bank on the way, High Noon Showdown, Friday Parlay, and best bets for your weekend with Lee Sterling of Paramount Sports. But now it's all things Twin City sports scene with one of our favorites, Darren Wolfson of KSTP up in the Twin Cities. Darren, welcome back into the show. Long time no talk. How you doing today?
I am doing well, Bert. Appreciate the invitation. Happy wife, happy life.
Oh,
life
yeah.
is in a good spot right now, so all is well on my end.
Hey, that makes sense to me as well. I'm in that same boat. Happily married, honey. College football season. We're coming down the stretch. We got the championship weekend in front of us, but I wanted to talk to you specifically about the Gophers. Again, the record, not amazing, 7-5, but a lot of bright spots this year as they're headed to another bowl game.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? 5 wins last year in the regular season, 7 this year. To me, successful year.
Mm-hmm.
They hadn't beaten, at least this regime, was winless against Brett Bielema, whether he was at, well, I guess it would have been always Illinois. It might have been Wisconsin early on. I'm trying to remember when Bielema left Wisconsin. But P.J. Fleck was winless against Brett Bielema. They go to Champaign, Illinois in early November. They win that game. They reclaim Paul Bunyan's axe, thoroughly defeat the Wisconsin Badgers. You beat USC. I get it. USC was down this year, Bert, but at the time, there was a lot to celebrate. Field storming. I get it, right? Like, to me, students should storm the field when you can. And so in that moment when USC was highly ranked, go have a good time. So all things considered, to me, successful season. It's just disappointing that the quarterback, Max Brosmer, who was really, really good, I wish he had another year of eligibility. They are losing so many guys, like a lot of college football rosters, with the portal, with everything, guys deciding should they come back for another year, go pro, guys like Joe Joyner on the defensive line, Cody Lindenberg, stud linebacker. I expect those guys who could come back to go pro. In fact, Joe Joyner made it official a couple days ago, accepting an invitation to the Senior Bowl. So the roster is going to look significantly different next year. But to me, P.J. Fleck is still a really, really good coach. I don't think if you're a Gophers fan, you should be rooting for him to go to North Carolina or somewhere else. Be careful what you wish for. I am a P.J. Fleck fan, and they were a lot better this year compared to last year.
Gophers 7-5 heading to a bowl game. Still to be determined following this weekend as to who they'll face, where, and when. The Minnesota Vikings are 10-2. Just about every time this team is good, I feel like maybe it's because it's a smaller market, in quotations, that they're slept on. There's not a whole lot of folks out there that are saying Vikings are Super Bowl favorites. Here they go, deep playoff run, etc. Last night we had the Lions and the Packers, and that's all anybody could talk about. There's hardly any mention of Minnesota. They're 10-2. What have you made from the season so far?
Well, I mean, I think that they can win the NFC. Call me nuts, Bert, but, you know, okay, I get it. The Detroit love, the Philadelphia love, but the Vikings are right there. This defense is as good as any in the NFL. Now, hey, we saw some warts on Sunday. Arizona had a lot of success running the ball. We haven't seen the Vikings run defense play like that in a while, right? So there are ways to attack this Vikings defense, but overall you feel pretty good about the defense, and the role that Sam Darnold is on, you feel pretty darn good. He hasn't turned the ball over for a few games. You always wonder, every game, will there be 2 or 3 head-scratching plays that Sam Darnold makes? He hasn't made those plays for the most part. I thought Arizona had a chance at 1 interception last Sunday, but for the most part, going back 3 games, Darnold has not made those plays. When he takes care of the ball, they can beat, to me, anyone in the NFC. I think the NFC is pretty darn wide open. I don't think it's a slam dunk that Detroit is going to the Super Bowl.
And we saw a lot from Detroit last night, a lot of aggressive calls per usual, per the norm from Motor City Dan Campbell. They take down the Packers 34-31. Darren Wolfson of KSTP in the Twin Cities is our guest here. Friday edition of Overtime. Just talked about the ceiling of the Minnesota Vikings. We talked about special head coaches with PJ Fleck. Kevin O'Connell is a really special head coach. What have you made of what he's been able to do this year and the quarterback quarterback situation, and what he's been able to do in guiding this team to a double-digit win season already and an opportunity maybe to get a playoff berth as soon as Sunday?
I'd love to be his agent, Bert. That's Trace Armstrong. I'd love to be Trace Armstrong. So KOC, Kevin O'Connell, in year 3 of a 4-year deal. I'm telling you, come the off season, he is going to sign a monster contract extension. Now, I'm not suggesting Andy Reid $20 million a year-esque, but he is going to make significantly more money on his next deal versus what he's making now, which is in the $4 million-ish, $4.5 million a year range. I mean, I think he's going to double, if not close to triple, his salary. Well-deserved, well-earned. I mean, I'm in that locker room multiple times a week, Bert. To a man, those guys love him. I'm putting together a story. We're doing a pregame show on the ABC affiliate here in the Twin Cities before the Monday night game against the Bears on the 16th. So the story I'm working on KOC's locker room speeches, how inspirational those speeches are. So I've spent the morning on YouTube going down the rabbit hole of listening to a bunch of his post-game speeches. Now, I get it. They only put the video out when they win, not when they lose.
Sure.
So I understand that with that caveat. But, just the way the guys are locked in on him. And you talk to a number of guys. They love Kevin O'Connell, and the record speaks for itself. 13 wins in his first year. Heck, still found a way to get to 7 last year with, 4 quarterbacks. Now this year, I don't think anybody thought they would have this sort of success with Sam Darnold. I mean, go back to late August, Bert. What were the preseason expectations for this team? Now, admittedly, I thought they would go over the Vegas over-under win total of 6.5. I thought they would be in the 8-9 win range. Never in a million years did I think we'd be sitting here on December 6th talking about a 10-win football team. Kevin O'Connell deserves a ton of credit for that. He is going to be the Vikings coach for a really long time.
Been an amazing coach so far in his Vikings tenure. The big storyline this weekend is around the Minnesota Vikings. It's also around the fact that Kirk Cousins is coming back into town. How do you think fans will generally respond? How will you respond? And in addition to that, just a comment on Kirk trying to get back on the right track after one of the worst games that he's ever had in his career last week.
Yeah, the 4 interceptions last week. You go back 3 games, all losses for the Falcons, no touchdown passes, 6 interceptions. You can certainly make a case in his 13-year career, Bert, this is the worst 3-game stretch he's ever had. For me, to me, win-win. The Vikings had some interest, but there was a price point that they were not willing to exceed, which I understood based on roster management, wanting to go out and sign Blake Cashman, Jonathan Grenard, Andrew Van Ginkel, go up and down the list of all the free agents they added in March. They wanted that sort of roster flexibility. Now, there was a little bit of a dead cap hit on Cousins. There isn't next year, so they'll have that much more flexibility come next March. But they had enough flexibility this past March to do enough in free agency when deciding not to pay the quarterback $40-plus million a year. Or in the case of Atlanta, what is Cousins making this year with his guarantees and all that? Over $60 million. But for Atlanta, they needed an upgrade. They're still in a position, it's a weak division, but they're still in a position to win the NFC South. That earns you a home playoff game. So to me, if I'm Arthur Blank, if I'm the Falcons, I feel pretty good, even though it was an overpay. But if you're the Vikings, it's worked out really, really well. So to me, win-win. But I can make a case, and I think it's because of the position there hasn't been a more polarizing Viking going back a couple decades. Let's just go back 20-ish years. We can go back even further, but I'm not sure. Maybe Randy Moss at times, the second time, maybe Percy Harvin. But because of the position, the quarterback position, I'm not sure there's been a more polarizing Viking going back a really, really long time. So I think the crowd reaction will be mixed. Some will recognize that he did enough in his 6 years here. Others will be upset that, hey, when you go all in like they did after they had gone to the NFC Championship game, you then sign Kirk Cousins. The idea was to at least get to a Super Bowl, to win the NFC. And in 6 years, they won just one playoff game.
Yeah, pretty crazy stuff. Kirk Cousins, a very, very nice guy, but I would imagine there will be some boos in Minneapolis coming up on Sunday. That is a noon start time. Vikings roughly a 5-point favorite in the game. Lastly, Darren Wolfson of KSTP in the Twin Cities. You can find his work, KSTP.com. Also contributes with Score North at DWolfson, KSTP on Twitter. The Timberwolves, we haven't talked about them a ton. They're out to a start to the season. They're 11-10, good and bad, good win streak going right now. What have you made of this team? What are a couple storylines, good and bad, to follow over the next couple weeks?
Well, on the good side, I mean, they're coming off their best performance of the year. They are coming off their best two-game stretch defensively. That was the issue through the first 18, 19 games. What the heck is going on with the defense? Giving up way too many points at the rim. Not all on Rudy Gobert, because the perimeter defense has stunk. But now you look at the numbers, right, because it can flip. You put together a really good two-game stretch of defense, 21 games in, it flips. They're darn near top 10 now, defensive rating. But if you go back a week and a half, they were bottom half of the league when, considering last year, they were the number one defense in the league. And it's not like Karl Anthony Towns is an all-world defender. Now, he had, to me, his best year defensively last year, but you move on from Cat, you don't expect the defense to go backwards as much as it did, going back, a few games. But it's been better of late. But keep an eye on that. Can they sustain that level of defensive success? Then just still figuring out, how to use Dante DiVincenzo, how to use Julius Randle. I think DiVincenzo is going to shoot the ball better, but you look at the shooting numbers, whether it's Jaden McDaniels, whether it's Dante DiVincenzo, some other guys, I feel like they're better shooters than what we've seen. So keep an eye on that. How does the three-point shot progress? Do those numbers start to climb from 32% or 29%? Can some of these guys get to 36%, 37%, perhaps even 39 or 40%? I still think pecking order-wise, they're in that top 6, 7 in the Western Conference, but really you're talking about the top 6, right? Because if you're not top 6, then you're stuck in the play-in. But the West is as deep as ever. So that's where they need to be careful. I've always said, I'll give it until Christmas. I get it. When you bring in Randle and DiVincenzo, it's going to take some time. If you had asked me, the day of the Cat trade, what their record would be through 21 games, I might have told you 12 or 13 wins. So they're close, 11 wins, okay? I didn't think they'd have 15 or 16 wins at this point, but I think what's disappointing for Wolves fans is they go to Portland. They lose twice. You go to Toronto. You lose. You go to San Antonio. Now, maybe the Spurs end up at least in the play-in, but these may not be playoff teams or even play-in teams. And you've had a few of those losses already. So that's what's somewhat troubling. They've been incredibly healthy. I know Mike Conley Jr., Bert, has missed some games, but you look across the league. I mean, tonight, Draymond Green may not play. Steph Curry did not play last night, may play tonight. But, how badly do we want the Draymond-Rudy Gobert matchup tonight? We may not get that. They play the Clippers the other night. Okay, great performance. The Wolves don't need to apologize for that, but Norman Powell, out. Kevin Porter Jr., out. Terrence Mann, out. We know Kawhi Leonard, out. They play well against the Lakers the other night. Austin Reeves, out. They play Sacramento recently, lost, but DeMar DeRozan, out. They beat Phoenix recently, but Phoenix was down Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal. The Wolves have caught some breaks this year in terms of the other team not having its full roster. So I do wonder about that, but maybe that'll be the way it is. The Wolves do a really good job, and there's some luck involved, but Greg Farnham, the strength and conditioning staff, the training staff, the medical staff with the Wolves do a really good job. So maybe there's something to be said about the Wolves knowing a little bit more than some other teams about, just finding ways to keep guys on the court. Durability, availability matters. So the Wolves have had that so far, but I still think they have a shot. I'm not quite sure at this point. This is a championship level roster, but I don't know how many teams I can say that about. Maybe it's Boston. I think the Celtics are fully capable of repeating, but outside of Boston, I don't know, Bert, if there's a team, in the Western Conference where I'm like, okay, for sure. Like Oklahoma City is really good.
Yeah. Yep.
I can't wait to see them when they get Chet Holmgren back. So they might be the one, but I'm not even sure I can look at Dallas. And hey, Dallas is pretty good, right? And once they made those moves last year, adding the two big men, P.J. Washington and Daniel Gafford, so two front court guys, like they took off. Now they have a full season with those guys, and Derek Lively is that much better. So maybe Dallas, but there's nobody in the Western Conference where I'm like, okay, like like in a best of 7, like the Wolves have no chance against that team. So it'll be fascinating to follow. It really will be, because like I can make a case for 6 or 7 teams in the Western Conference being able to win 3 series to get to the NBA Finals.
Minnesota Timberwolves 11-10. They will be on the road against Golden State tonight. That's a 9:00 jump time on ESPN. Darren Wolfson of KSTP in the Twin Cities. Darren, you're the best, my friend. Always appreciate the time, and thanks so much for all the coverage of Minnesota pro sports. We appreciate it.
Bert, thank you for following the script. I'm definitely not the best.
Oh, come on, man. You're at least the second best.
I appreciate the kind words. Have a wonderful weekend.
Darren Wolfson of KSTP in the Twin Cities. You can find the work, KSTP.com. Score North contributions as well. And on Twitter, @DWolfson, KSTP. When we come back, it's time to hit you with Bert's Bank on a Friday. I have been better than average, but not by much lately. I have gotten 2-1, 2-1, 2-1, 2-1, back to back to back to back. I would love a 3-0 undefeated weekend sometime soon, but I'm being pretty consistently okay so far through Bert's Bank. We hit that next on Overtime. Talk a little NFL talk and college football before the top of the hour and this week's edition of the High Noon Showdown. That's all on the way. It's Overtime on a Friday right here on ESPN Sioux Falls.
Overtime is unwrap your sandwich and get caught up with Bert Rameen on ESPN 102.3 and AM 1000 KSOO, Sioux Falls sports leader.
Right back with you on this Friday edition of Overtime. Just about time for Bert's Bank. Last week I was 2-1. This week looking for 3-0 overall this season. Let's do this math real quick with you. Live on air, 22-18. The record for Bert's Bank. Not too shabby despite a really slow start this year. Update on the Green Bay Packers injury-wise. Packers safety Evan Williams left last night's game with a concussion, already down 2 members of the secondary to start the game. The Packers lost safety Evan Williams in the first half of last night's loss to the Lions due to a concussion. The rookie walked into the locker room under his own power to be evaluated and did not return. Zane Anderson, who had only played 8 snaps on defense all season entering last night, replaced Evan Williams. The Packers became even thinner in the secondary as the game progressed. They lost nickel defensive back Javon Bullard in the second half to a right ankle injury that required him to use crutches on his way out of the locker room after the game. So yes, the Packers are very dinged up, particularly in the defensive backfield. These 2 youngsters were guys that were thrust into starting roles because they were already thin enough. And Green Bay, except for Xavier McKinney on the back end of the Packer defense, everyone else is pretty darn dinged up out there. Carrington Valentine, a fringe starter. Keyshawn Nixon was playing out of position last night. They put together a decent effort, but could not stop Detroit when it matters the most. And now Green Bay with a couple marquee injuries, Evan Williams concussion and Javon Bullard leaving on crutches out of the locker room with an ankle injury. They were without Jair Alexander, Corey Ballantyne, and Edgerrin Cooper last night entering the game on defense. Kenny Clark, though, one of the defensive leaders of the Green Bay Packers, saying we're definitely going to be back here and we'll be excited to play them again once we do, according to the team's website. But it's tough. It's a tough loss. Got to be better from here, and we will get better from here. There's a lot to fall into place before the third round of the Packers and Lions will be a sure thing. But the way last night's played out means that Clark won't be the only one hoping to see these clubs square off again. It's really hard to beat a team 3 seasons. Detroit certainly could beat the Packers, but based on game 1, game 2, everything that went wrong for Green Bay, a lot of credit for that goes to Detroit, but a couple bad bounces, Christian Watson's fumble, XYZ. I think the Packers are capable of playing with and beating the Lions. They could have beaten them last night. They did not. And the Lions were the better team last night, but the postseason, different animal, different ball game. We'll see exactly if we get that matchup, which a lot of people are asking for. Lions, Packers in Detroit once again. I hope we see it. We'll wait and see. But if we get it, should be another great game coming up later on in the postseason. Time now for Bert's Bank on a Friday, delivering the goods. Usually pretty reliable advice here, all for giggles, though, as always. It's Bert's Bank on a Friday. Let's hit it.
There may not be much in there.
Where's all the money? That's as good as money, sir. Those are IOUs. Go ahead and add it up. Every cent's accounted for.
In fact, there's probably less than last week.
They've done studies, 60% of the time, it works every time.
That doesn't make sense.
But it's Friday, and maybe against our better judgment, it is time to open Bert's Bank.
As the great Macaulay Culkin says in Home Alone, I'm not afraid anymore. I'm not afraid to look into Bert's Bank because things have been better and better and better this year. 22-18 the overall record, 2-1 last week. Over the Thanksgiving holiday, I gave you the Bears covering a big number in Detroit, 10.5. That's a win. I gave you the Packers at home. I did not feel good about it, but I said the Packers would beat the Dolphins by more than 3.5, and they did. And then I told you Vegas, one of the worst teams in the NFL, would not play ball with Kansas City. And lo and behold, Kansas City, a team that loves to play everyone close, whether you're the Carolina Panthers, whether you're the Las Vegas Raiders or some miscellaneous college down there in Kansas or Missouri, the Kansas City Chiefs like to play you close. They like to win the games and like to be in the Super Bowl conversation every single year. The Chiefs let me down, 2-1, the record last weekend. This weekend, college football is the focus tonight. Mountain West Conference Championship game. The Mountain West does it a little bit different than the other big conferences do. This game is at a school's site. Boise State set to play host to UNLV. Boise's got one of, for my money, the best player at a specific one position in the country, Ashton Jeanty. He's a great running back, could be on the way to having the best rushing season in terms of total rushing yards in the history of college football at this level. Barry Sanders, 2,600-ish yards. Ashton Jeanty right now, as we're staring this game in the face, already way over 2,000 yards on the season. And want to get it correct here for you, he has 2,288 yards and 28 touchdowns on the ground so far. But I don't think he's the main reason they win the game. Who is the main reason then? It's the quarterback of the Broncos this year, Maddox Madsen. He's been fantastic, efficient, and a perfect complement to Jeanty. So if the Rebels slow down Jeanty and they have the opportunity, they load up the box and they say, all right, Maddox, beat us through the air. He can do that. 21 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. Boise is a 4.5-point favorite in the game. I think they cover that and win this one by about a touchdown. Boise State, my first bankable pick of the weekend, minus 4.5. Elsewhere, you guys know, you listen to the show this year, I am not a fan of Penn State. They're in the Big Ten title game. They broke my Badger heart in the Big Ten title game not too long ago with Trace McSorley in a come-from-behind fashion victory. But it's a different animal this year. They're going against the Oregon Ducks and the best coach in all of college football, for my money, Dan Lanning. Super prepared dude. Every single scenario matters. I appreciate the attention to detail immensely there. Oregon will roll against Penn State. They're just a 3.5-point favorite, neutral site in Indianapolis. Give me the Ducks by 10, at least 7 points in that game. Laying 3.5, that's an easy pick for Bert's Bank this weekend. And lastly, as we dive in to the NFL football slate this weekend, Chargers and Chiefs, Sunday Night Football. Kansas City has a tendency and a weakness of playing with their food. The issue, though, the Chargers are not easy to eat. It's like a dry, chewy, ridiculously bad steak right now for the LA Chargers. It's not going to go down easy, and frankly, I think the Chargers win this game outright in Kansas City. They're getting 4.5 points. They at least cover. That's Bert's bank. Boise State minus 4.5, Oregon minus 3.5 against Penn State, and then the Chargers at Arrowhead. The toughest game of the year so far physically for the Kansas City Chiefs will go the way of the visiting LA Chargers, and Jim Harbaugh cracks it open post-game and says, hey, that was pretty fun. Heck of an opportunity. Let's move on. Big win for the Chargers Sunday Night Football. Give me LA for Bert's Bank on a Friday. We take the break, come back with all sorts of college football news. Bill Belichick interviewing for a college head coaching position. Good idea, bad idea, insane idea. We'll tell you next, coming up on Overtime, the latest from college football to conclude hour number 1 on a Friday.
You want more of Overtime? It's all on the podcast. Free with the app or online at ESPN Sioux Falls. Overtime with Bert Rameen on ESPN 102.3 and AM 1000 KSOO.
Right back with you to round out hour number 1 on a Friday. Stay tuned. Hour number 2, Friday Parlay. Before that, the High Noon Showdown, listener against listener. You got to be a well-rounded sports fan. That's the only clue I'll give you today for the High Noon Showdown. But you can win really big, some Sioux Falls Skyforce tickets and more. And of course, a gift certificate to the all-new Uncle Ed's Specialty Meats out there on the east side of Sioux Falls, helping you to elevate your grill game this season. Now, news close to home for college football. 5 different cities have submitted bids to host the FCS championship game for the 2025 and 2026 seasons. Frisco has been a great home to the title game. The contract is set to expire, and Toyota Stadium, the physical host stadium, is being renovated. So here are your 5 landing spots. The first one is Frisco. The city of Frisco would like to find a temporary place that is not Toyota Stadium while they can remain the home of FCS college football. And for those of you Jackrabbit fans, Bison fans, any fan of FCS college football that have been down to Frisco, you know how great that community is as a home of the FCS national title game. So Frisco still in the cards, a couple years away from Toyota Stadium while it's being renovated. The other cities that come to mind, some intriguing ones closer to home here: Nashville, Houston, St. Louis, and Kansas City. Which one of those would you like to see the most? You can weigh in with us as always at ESPN Sioux Falls on Twitter. Would you like it to remain in Frisco? Nashville, Houston, St. Louis, Kansas City, pretty darn close to home here. A bigger swath of fans wearing blue and yellow, maybe some red and black in the near future for the USD Coyotes if they get there to the FCS national title game. A lot to look forward to. Sam Herder on Twitter at Sam Herder FCS posting that this morning. Bill Belichick might have some suitors in the NFL this year, and he might have a suitor or two in the college game. Won 6 Super Bowls with the New England Patriots, has had discussions with North Carolina, as in University of North Carolina, about the Tar Heels head coaching job. The 72-year-old has been out of football this year after leaving the Patriots following last year. Sources told ESPN that Belichick, who spent his career in the NFL, wants to coach again and is open to listening to people at the college and the NFL level. UNC just got done with an old-timer at the head spot, Mac Brown. They fired him back on November 26th after six seasons at the post. The 73-year-old Brown, a college football Hall of Famer, was in his second stint at the school. Belichick is far and away the biggest name to surface in UNC's search so far. Tulane's John Sumrall has also been mentioned. Other candidates include Iowa State's Matt Campbell, Georgia defensive coordinator Glenn Schumann, and Steve Wilkes, who was the Arizona Cardinals head coach in 2018, Panthers interim head coach in 2022. Wilkes, a volunteer assistant this year at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. So, Bill Belichick in the cards. I don't know if that makes sense. Personally, I don't think it does, based on the new climate of college football. Not a professional environment, but a semi-paid NIL environment. Work 365, working from that grassroots up. And for UNC, that is an intriguing landing spot. Power 4 conference. a program that has yet to have big-time dominance, especially in the last 20, 30 years. It's been a long time since UNC has been continually relevant, but in the current state of the ACC and soon to be altered, potentially ACC, could be a good landing spot for a lot of marquee head coaches, Bill Belichick possibly included. Utah State is their new head coach, hiring New Mexico's Bronco Mendenhall as the next football coach, announcing Friday that he will sign a 6-year contract. Mendenhall just finished his first season with the Lobos, guiding them to a 5-7 finish. Mendenhall left BYU in late 2015 to take over at Virginia, built them into a contender in the ACC, including a 9-5 Orange Bowl season in 2019. A couple other stops along the way, but Bronco Mendenhall's next stop will be as the head coach of the Utah State Aggies. And rounding out your college football news here, Georgia set to get Trevor Etienne back perhaps this weekend. He's listed as questionable on the SEC's availability report. There will be a daily availability report until Saturday, when the final version is released 90 minutes before kickoff. Trevor Etienne, the younger brother of Jaguars running back Travis Etienne, big-time player in that Georgia Bulldog backfield. He is questionable for the game. Bevo, though, is not going to be at the game. Tough news. Number 2, Texas. Number 5, Georgia, preparing for a rematch in Saturday's SEC championship game. And there's no such luck for another meeting between famed mascots and lovable mascots, Uga, the Bulldog, and Bevo, the Longhorn. Bevo, who famously made news back in 2019 in the mascot's pregame photo op at the Sugar Bowl when he came charging out of his pen and knocked over a police barricade, was not permitted to travel to Atlanta for this weekend's game. The size required for an enclosure large enough to house Bevo XV, who is more than 1,700 pounds with a horn span of 58 inches, was the issue for Saturday. Not big enough to get Bevo in the house. Unfortunate there. Bevo and Uga, not the best friends. They got in a little spat back in 2019. Hopefully that matchup thrives without his presence. That's the latest from the college football world. It is time now for the High Noon Showdown. I'm going to take caller 2 and caller 4. If you want to win big, the time is now. We did not have a High Noon Showdown last week. Prize pack rolls over. It's a big one. Can't wait to hook you up, but you got to beat up your neighbor. Caller 2, caller 4. The number is always to dial to contest with us is 605-362-3776. You want to enter the weekend a champion? All you got to do is dial us up. Be caller 2, caller 4 right now. 605-362-3776. One more time. Get on the line. 605-362-3776.